Good evening, Uganda. Hello and welcome to this special edition of On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest this evening is the Katikkiro of Buganda, Oweekitiibwa Peter Mayiga. It's been 7 years since he started serving as Katikkiro of Buganda, and he has added some energy into the kingdom. But what has been his challenges? Are they surmountable? Oweekitiibwa Peter Mayiga is on the spot tonight. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to speak to you. Of course, the world is going through something that has never happened almost in 100 years. The last time we had like this as a human race was in 1918 during the Spanish flu. I wonder, in this time of lockdown, before I even hound you with the questions, how you're faring on yourself?
Well, it's a big challenge. To run the kingdom under these circumstances is extremely challenging, because you don't get to meet with the people, you don't interface with them. And I like very much to work with the people themselves. Even my colleagues, I can't meet my colleagues. So we hold meetings by Zoom. So cabinet sits, by Zoom. We talk to our kingdom officials, the CEOs, and all these things by telephone, by email, through Zoom conference, that kind of thing. It's a very big challenge. Because the kingdom is about the people. You must meet with the people to introduce the programs, to work with them. So when you can't meet them, it's a very big challenge. But also, it affects so many things. For example, the Kabaka was going to tour the southern end of Buddu County. That is Chotera district today, all the way up to Mutukula. That's where the Kabaka was going. He hadn't been there for quite some time. And his subjects wanted to see him, and he was going there in March, which we cancelled. We cancelled the Kabaka's birthday activities, the Kabaka's birthday run. The Kabaka's birthday run is the biggest in Africa, the 5th in the world. So you can imagine when you cancel such an event. We cancelled so many things. I was going to launch the 2020 coffee drive, a Mwanterimba program. I was going to Busuju. Busuju is in Mityana district. All those programs were cancelled. It's a very big challenge.
It's been 7 years since His Majesty the King of Buganda gave you Damula, which is, I suppose, the instrument of power to allow you to serve as Katikkiro. Take us through your journey of 7 years as Katikkiro of Buganda.
Well, we've done quite a few things. But my colleagues and I decided that the first thing we had to do was to go to the people and tell them it's their job to develop their kingdom. They're thinking that somebody from outside is going to come with the goodies is old-fashioned. So that's the first thing we agreed on with my colleagues, and we went out and met the people. You know the Tofali Drive,
yes.
And I think you've interviewed me about that.
I did.
Many people think Tofali was about money. Money was just a small segment of the objective. The objective was to tell people to rise up and hold the kingdom in their hands, which they did. Because when we would go out, we would tell the people, look, you go to work. You cannot lament forever. You cannot talk about the past all the time. I mean, the kingdom's glory cannot be in the past. The kingdom's glory can only be now. So you've got to rise up, and it starts with you at the individual level. If you are staying in the village, you must wake up in the morning, go and dig. That's what somebody in the village does, or herd cattle. If you are in town, you must do something that brings you some money, because how are you going to survive? Government cannot make you prosper.
Talking about the kingdom's glory, you earlier alluded to having some form of a federal system of governance, or maybe a federal system for Buganda. And many people say maybe that could be the best thing that can help even other kingdoms to run.
But of course.
But now that has not happened. Did you and Buganda and all people who were aspiring for a federal system of governance, did you punch above your weight on that?
No, we didn't punch above our weight. I believe that what people want, you know, eventually reigns. People eventually get to where they want to be. You know this, during the constitution making process, the people of Buganda, 90% said we want a federal system of government. The people of Uganda, collectively, 65% told Justice Benjamin Odoki that they want a federal system of government. There were under-table deals in the Constituent Assembly that defeated this proposition. Everyone knows it.
That's an explosive allegations you're making,
Of course,
Honorable Prime Minister.
Under-table deals.
Under-table deals with who?
Oh.
By who?
Kamara, I mean, look, if people have said we want a federal system of government, how come it is not written in the Constitution? It's as simple as that. It's clear. As definite as night.
Was that the chairman of the commission? Was that the chief executive of the country? Was it the prime minister? Who? Because Buganda is such a big force in Uganda, because in every sector of our governance, there are people from Buganda.
Buganda is a big...
Were people from Buganda sabotaging themselves?
Buganda is a big factor.
It is.
But someone could even, you know, ban the monarchy. If someone can ban the monarchy, someone can influence lawmakers. Someone could have influenced the people who wrote the Constitution. Clearly, clearly the way the motion was defeated on federalism in the Constituent Assembly.
Yeah, but when the Katikkiro of Buganda, like in your position, say that there were undercover deals.
There were under-table deals.
Under-table deals.
Definitely.
Then you're actually in the know. Who did it?
Well, certain things must be said at the right time. I'm not so sure this is the exact right time to say it, but I'm a student of history, and I know plenty of stuff.
So you have a black book in your house with the names of people who have sabotaged in Buganda, do you?
That reminds me of Paul Kawanga Semogere's black book. But this is in the public arena. If you follow the CA debates, you can even get the Hansards. You can clearly see that, you see, the UPC people, I think it was Eresu from Teso, who brought the motion for a federal system of government. Now, some people, you know, played the Obote boogie. You know, you see, this is Obote man, the people who you know, raped the Constitution and denied us a federal system of government. Now they're the same people who are telling us they want a federal system of government now. I remember Professor Sentes Akajubi, when we were discussing these things, the late Professor Sentes Akajubi said, should we support these guys, should we not support them? These are the UPC guys who abolished the monarchy. These are the guys who you know, raped the Constitution and threw out the federal system of government that Ugandans had agreed on in 1962. How do we work with them when they bring the motion in support of a federal system of government? Those were the questions going on in Mengo. And Professor Sentes Akajubi said, if I'm a Christian, which I am, and somebody denies Jesus today,
yes,
but tomorrow says, I've seen the light, I understand Jesus, do you run away from him or do you embrace him? You know, and we said
people change.
People change. If they think a federal system of government is correct now, if they come to terms with their mistakes of the past, what's wrong with supporting the motion for a federal system of government? You
know, now that you've talked about the 60s, at the dawn of independence, the king of Buganda was also the ceremonial president of Uganda.
Yeah, in 1963, yes.
Yes, and that was giving a lot of glory, a lot of pride for the kingdom of Buganda. Do you and the entire Buganda live with that nostalgia?
Now, of course, the king of Buganda, you know, is revered. Even Kabaka Mutebi today is very highly revered. I think he's one of the most respected people in Uganda. I don't think he has to be president to be revered. I don't think so. I don't think so. Him being custodian of our heritage, I mean, this is a heritage of nearly 1,000 years. So I think that is big enough.
You know, when you received the Damula, which is, I suppose, the instrument of power to serve as Katikkiro of Buganda, you know, there were many people who could have said, maybe could have doubted you or not, but there's no doubt you have given some kind of energy that everybody saw, the Tofali and other things. But did you have a sense that for the kingdom to be apolitical, perhaps that's a stumbling block? We could have done more if you are not apolitical.
Well, we aspire for a federal system of government, in which case the Kabaka's government would be empowered both at the legal front and at the economic front. That's what we aspire for. That's what we are going to pursue. That's what we shall attain at some point in time. You see, we have time on our side.
You have 90% acceptance of the federal government of system in Buganda and 65% acceptance in the entire country.
Yeah.
But you have a few individuals whom you haven't told us who perhaps sabotage the system. Are you waiting for these individuals to go? Do you have a plan for these individuals who may be hard?
No,
the under table kind of deals.
Before you asked me, I was telling you that we have the time. We have the time. You know? I think some people have the watches. We have the time. And I think the distinction must be drawn. The kingdom of Buganda is going to be here today, tomorrow, and the other day, I think. And what people desire, you know, is attained.
No, I want
eventually. So let me explain this.
Yes, Honorable Prime Minister.
Let me explain this. Federalism isn't about anything other than good governance. Federalism isn't anything other than giving people in a given community the chance to lay out their priorities. Look at culture. A number of cultural institutions in the country today are supported by the central government. If the central government doesn't buy the cultural leader a vehicle, the people cannot buy it. There was a time, I think last year, the cultural head of the Bagisu didn't have a car. He said his car had an engine knock. Can you believe this? And he said he was waiting for, I think, money from the president's office to repair the vehicle. But in all honesty, can the people of Bugisu themselves buy their cultural leader a vehicle? Won't that be their priority if they had a federal system of government?
With all respect, you know, some cultural institutions are a recent construct, and I'm saying that with all respect, because people in the past did not know how to coalesce around the kingdom, how to have an administrative of that nature. So it is a work in progress, I suppose.
Well, look, if you artificially create cultural institutions, they won't last. It's as simple as that. But the point is, if you have a federal system of government, let's say if you had 15 states in Uganda, yeah? That is Chigezi, Ankole, Rwenzori, Toro, Bunyoro, West Nile, Acholi, Lango, Teso, Karamoja, Elgon, to include
Bukedi and Busoga.
To include Bugisu and Kapchora. Then you have Bukedi, I think that should be Tororo. Then you have Busoga and Buganda. Each of these states can decide whether they want to have cultural institutions or not. And if they have them, that should be their choice. That shouldn't be the choice of anyone sitting in Kampala. That should be the choice of the people in those states, whether or not to have a king.
Yeah, I'm saying,
or otherwise, or a chief.
Yes, but the problem is that whereas Buganda has had 1,000 years to deal with this institution, you have norms and cultures and values. You know how to relate. Others will have to learn. It's going to be a learn. There will be teething problems we have seen.
But culture is not synonymous with kingdoms. You don't have to have a king to enjoy the cultural mores that are found in your community. The Machiga, for example, don't have a king, but they are very culturally grounded. You don't have to have a king. For those whose cultural expression culminates into a king, like Buganda or Bunyoro or Toro, they will have them. Others who have chiefs will have chiefs. Others will have clan leaders. Others have community leaders. Not everyone has to have a king.
Okay,
That's the point.
I just want to go back to the issue of Buganda having a federal system, and perhaps there could have been some sabotage or deals. And I'm thinking, probably I've ever asked you this question, but look at other countries. You know, the Prussians lead Russia, the English lead England, the French lead France, and the Kikuyus, who I'm sure the largest ethnic grouping in Kenya, lead Kenya. Why can't Buganda, the largest ethnic grouping in our country, you know, choose that person who can be a leader, whom you're going to put in office, a political head. And when he's in office, they're not going to be some kind of under-table deals. He will be having Buganda at heart and Uganda at heart as well.
I do not.
You have what it takes as Buganda.
Look, I'm going to answer you like this. What Uganda needs is the rule of law. If you have the rule of law, every region is going to get what they aspire for. The rule of law and good governance is all that the country needs. Now, the president, the one at the helm, could be a Muganda, he could be a Mutoro, he could be anybody. What is important is to have the institutions of state running affairs of the country. It doesn't have to be a Muganda. I mean, it could be a Muganda who is not hinged. Godfrey Binaisa, I was a young man when Godfrey Binaisa was president, and he came to Chitova, I remember very well, when I was in St. Henry's College. He came to see the bishop at the cathedral. And Godfrey Binaisa was talking about setting up a plant for assembling aeroplanes in Masaka. And young as I was, I thought the man was extremely unserious. You know, the war had just ravaged the country. And the president is talking about setting up assembly plants for aeroplanes in Masaka. I thought he was just a joke. He was a Muganda, right? Actually from Olyulangira. So the country needs somebody who's got his head.
But we can't run away from the fact. We can't run away from the fact that Buganda is so central in Uganda. Civilization in our country started here. You have the largest ethnic grouping of our country here.
I think civilization started in Bunyoro Chitara.
Well, the European kind.
If you go back, but if you talk about the current
kind of civilization,
the current experiences we have, the British
real modern education began here, and so people here are relatively better off than other parts of our country. So you have that as leverage. I don't want to sound tribalistic, but I just want to ask a question to Buganda. Why? You have everything in your favor. Why don't you use it as a leverage?
Every country has its dynamics. The kind of politics you find in each country has its own dynamics. In Russia, for example, Joseph Stalin was coming from Georgia. Georgia is now an independent country. It's a small entity of Russia. You know?
Yes.
In comparative terms, look, I think Georgia is comparable to, in terms of size. If you bring in the Ugandan example, I think Georgia could be something like Toro.
Or even Usuku County.
Or Usuku County.
Yes.
Small country like this. That's where Joseph Stalin came from. And he ruled these people until he got a stroke.
With over 11 time zones.
With 11 time zones. And the Russian region, because the country actually was called Russia, although Russia is only a region, just like you have Holland being a region of the Netherlands, or like some people at times refer to the UK as England, mainly because England is the most influential part of the UK. So Russia, with millions of people, couldn't get somebody to govern them until, you know, Stalin actually got a stroke. So every country has its dynamics. As far as Uganda is concerned, we had Kabaka Mutesa as the first president. Then we had the dynamics that brought in Yusuf Chironde Lule. and they threw him out after 6 to 8 days. Then we had the Joker, in Godfrey Binaisa. He was there for 11 months. Then we had Paulo Mwanga. I don't know, he was chairman of the military commission with Mr. Museveni. These are dynamics going on in the country. And I think a time is going to come when Muganda becomes president.
Yeah, but
it should not be something we should...
Right, Honorable Prime Minister, you seem not to appreciate the power that you have in Buganda. The numbers, the numerical strength, you know, the education, the exposure. And the only spark or glue that is lacking is for you to speak with one voice. But there seems to have been an element of sabotage from within Buganda.
Yeah,
and other countries seem to have used their numbers, their numerical strength, and as leverage to lead their countries. And that's why, in fact, if I could refresh your mind, that's why Professor Mahmoud Bamdan was asking you, why is it that the largest ethnic grouping in Uganda has a psychology of the minority?
No, but that's a simplistic statement. With all due respect to the professor, with all due respect to Professor Mamdan, that is extremely simplistic. Look, where was Nyerere coming from? Was he from the largest ethnic group? I don't think so. But he was president of Tanzania. I think the most revered president of Tanzania. Sometimes they call him Baba wa Taifa, like the founder of the country. What about President Nelson Mandela? He doesn't come from the largest ethnic group. The largest ethnic group in South Africa are the Zulus. President Mandela is a Xhosa. How come he became president of South Africa? How come is he referred to as the liberator of South Africa? What about Barack Obama? Recently, he's from the black community. Are they the largest in America? I don't think so. So you see, I told you about the dynamics. The dynamics differ from country to country. In Uganda, we haven't changed president for 34 years now. What has that got to do with Buganda? I don't think that has anything to do with Buganda. That is one point. Secondly, I don't think the point is having a Muganda at the helm, a Muganda as president. It has also to do with the competence. For me, if we get a competent Muganda, it will be a welcome thing. But I don't want a Muganda in name. It must also go with the competence of the candidate.
Let's look at the issue of land, which is so central in Uganda, but also in Buganda. Land grabbing has been rampant in this region.
Yes.
To the extent that some sacred land has actually been grabbed or sold off by sometimes even the custodian themselves or the caretakers. You know, there's a risk that His Majesty the King could reign over people who are landless in his own kingdom. What's your take on that?
That's one of the biggest challenges we are faced with today. I was telling my colleagues in cabinet that the biggest challenges we have are four. I'll only disclose two. One of them is land, another is the federal system of government. The other two I will not disclose at the moment. There are four challenges we have. And the issue of land must be addressed by looking at 6 factors. If you're going to resolve the land evictions and land grabbing, there are 6 factors that need to be examined and I think implemented. The first one, the police simply lack the capacity to investigate land-related matters. The land unit of the police force is extremely weak. It is not facilitated. It lacks the technical ability. Overall. So when you come and occupy my land illegally, the police may not be able to come and investigate and gather evidence that needs to be tabled in court. That's the first problem. The second problem is the performance of the courts. The courts in Uganda, I'm a lawyer, and I was an active practitioner before I was named Katikkiro. And when I started law practice in 1994, we would dispose of land cases in a month's time in courts all over the country. Today you'll be lucky to dispose of a land matter in 5 years. You'd be lucky. I handled a case for 10 years because the way the court functions is a very big challenge, you know. The mighty ones get their way around even the courts, like they do even around the police. The court.
Hasn't the Bamugemerere Commission helped in that?
I don't know, it's a commission. They gathered evidence. We have to wait for their report. Their job was to gather evidence, really. Their job was not to, you know, to pronounce themselves on this and on the other. The Commissions of Inquiry Act is very clear.
I thought they had powers of the court.
I don't think so. They've got powers to summon you and you testify before them. They can punish you if you do not, you know, answer the summons. But they do not have powers to issue directives and orders and things like this. It was even decided in court. But let me tell you the 6 factors. The police, the court. The third is the performance of the land officers. The inefficiency in the land offices. The criminals get the land titles. The genuine people have theirs cancelled. The problem in the land offices, that's the third factor. The fourth factor is the population explosion. You know, if people are 100 in a village, now they are 500. The land hasn't increased. And with the fourth goes the fifth. The nutrients in the land, overuse of the land, the nutrients dry out. So somebody who could survive on an acre now needs 3 acres because it cannot produce the same amounts of food.
The Buganda Land Board.
Let me finish the 6th, then you'll ask me. The 6th is political interference. RDCs, you know, defy court orders. Now, I've already told you the courts are not doing their best. And now when they issue orders, they're defied by the RDCs and all sorts of political heavyweights. Now, if you want to address the land problems in the country today, especially in Buganda, those are the 6 factors. It is not the Milo land system, as some people are claiming. Because we've had the Milo land system since 1900. Why is it that we are getting the problems now?
So is the land law disadvantageous to Buganda? Because, for example, I remember the law that was giving security of tenancy, that if people had you know, moved on a land and stayed there for about 12 years.
Don't worry about this. These are monkeys. The president says these are our relatives.
Oh, yeah, okay. If people had have stayed in Buganda on a land for over 12 years, the security of tenancy was like, you cannot evict them. Was that the biggest problem for Buganda? Because I can imagine people could have moved in, occupied Ruwera, occupied all those places in Mpigi and Luwero, but now you can't chase them because the law gives them the authority to be there.
No, the biggest problem is not has never been the law, it's the governance. These are governance issues. For example, why can't the police be equipped to do their job? Why can't the courts do their job? Why can't the land officers do their job? These are governance issues. They have nothing to do with the law. And that was our far cry, even when all these laws were being introduced way back in 1998. The problem is how you empower the agencies charged with the duty to implement the law to do their work. If somebody goes and occupies your land and the police can't help you, how is the law going to be on your side? How is the law going to help anyone when the courts can't dispose of cases? The problem isn't the Busulu and Mvujo and all these things or the Milo land. The problem are governance issues.
You know, there are people who criticized you a lot when you came up with this project called Chapa Mungalo.
Those were self-seekers.
And I think even Chapa Mungalo, which is your baby,
those were simply self-seekers.
Was bad for Buganda.
How was it bad for Buganda?
That's what I hear.
The Kabaka is telling you, are you seated on my land? Come and I give you a title. You can take it to the bank. You can take it to Patrick Kamara for a soft loan. You can. Whoever has a registered interest on land is in a better position than somebody who has a claim that is difficult to define. And the people who are saying Chapa Mungalo is wrong are the first people to go and get their certificates of title in the Buganda Land Board. These were self-seekers. They didn't want the people of Buganda to be empowered.
Is it?
Do you understand me?
Okay. Is it also a problem that because Buganda has welcomed so many people outside of Buganda, and more, quite a number of us have interest in Buganda, almost every politician in that parliament or every minister or every commissioner has some kind of piece of land in Buganda. And so you do not get so many allies in the corridors of power when you're discussing issues of Buganda, because the rest of Uganda has vested interest in Buganda.
I don't know. I don't know whether that is the case. I've been analyzing this issue of land, and everything leads into those 6 factors. And until they are addressed, these problems keep growing and becoming dangerous. And yes, there are certain people who dislodge people from the land, especially those who are corrupt. They get money, they steal money, then they go and they buy off the registered owners, and they go and they evict the Bibanja owners. When the Bibanja owners run the police, they can't be protected, because the Chibanja owner has always been protected, even under the Maryland system. They go to the courts, they can't get justice. You end up with chaos. I see the people in Mubende and everywhere. Where are the agencies that are supposed to protect the people, the police, the courts? Where are they? These are the issues. These are the major issues.
Honorable Prime Minister, we're going to take a break. I'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guest this evening is the Prime Minister of Buganda, Oweekitiibwa Peter Mayiga. I just want us now to look into the issue of COVID-19. And it appears this is going to change our country, or even the world entirely. I wonder how Buganda is prepared to, move on post-COVID-19. You've already told us you've been using Zoom communication technology for your meetings. But are there any other, ingenuity of the people of Buganda, or any innovations that you see and you think you are going to provide them support so that they can move on?
Well, first of all, you're talking about IT, Zoom technology and all these things. I wrote a book in 2016 called Uganda 7 Key Transformation Idea. I don't know whether Patrick has read it. And you should read it because you are interested in current affairs.
I'm going to go with a copy today.
Yeah, I could give you a copy actually. And in that book, I talked about the need to develop infrastructure in the country. And for me, infrastructure doesn't stop with roads or railways. I talked about water, like water for consumption in the homes. And I also talked about telephony and the internet. Because without telephony, it's difficult to have the internet, because you access the internet via the telephone, mobile phone. And I said, in this day and age, those who are going to reign supreme are the people who master ICT. Because today you can find markets, even if you are in a far-off village, like my home village, Kasanje, in Ibukoto, in Budu, you can access the market. You can access knowledge. You can do research using the internet. And there is a young man called Mota Subi. He's born in Nkozi, in Maokota, that's in PG district. The one of those that the Queen awarded the other year. He came up with an app that farmers can use to find markets for their produce. I went and visited him. So we must place emphasis on ICT post-COVID, because even after this pandemic is being brought under control, I think we are going to rely very much on ICT to carry our programs forward. So, in the Kingdom of Buganda, I've instructed all our organizations and companies, and the Kabaka's government itself, to fully embrace ICT at every level of administration. Because look at the look at the program we introduced of Mwaniterimba, where we promote production of coffee in the kingdom. You can understand everything about coffee if you have the internet. And you simply have to understand what is going on in the coffee market globally. If you're going to tell the people growing it at the local level the right stuff. So post-COVID, internet is key. Secondly, many people are concerned that we are going to experience a severe economic turn down. And statisticians and economists have painted gloomy pictures. I am just a layman. I'm only a lawyer. And of course now I'm an administrator. But when you examine history, after a crisis, there is a spike in demand. It's universal. You know, during wars, there is no production. Everything comes to a standstill. It's like we're experiencing a war. We are indoors, we don't meet our loved ones, we do not go to work. It's like a war experience. And after a war, there is a spike in demand. When stability reigned starting around 1986, there was a spike in demand in the country, despite the fact that a number of governance issues were not, you know, were not well handled.
There's hope that
so this is
there
what
is
I
going
think.
to be some resurgence in terms of
That's what I think.
the
Look,
economy. But
let me give you simple examples. Like I told you, I'm not an economist. But from a layman's point of view, now schools are closed. When they reopen, at whatever time they reopen, there's going to be a huge demand for food. You know, feeding all these school kids. And people who have got land, who can cultivate, may make a killing. When the lockdown is lifted, the demand for food is going to rise. Today people are eating sparingly, kind of, because they don't have the money. They want to spare the little cash they have and all these things. But when the lockdown is lifted, people are going to resume their normal eating habits. There's going to be a demand for more food.
okay,
Look at the entertainment industry.
Mr. Prime Minister, we can see our health workers have done a tremendous job in trying to keep Ugandans safe, trying to save lives. But the livelihoods are taking a serious hit, a serious knock. I wonder if
The livelihoods of the health workers?
the livelihoods of every Ugandan, of every person in Buganda, for example, because they're not working, they're not tilling their land like they could, they're not selling anything. So I wonder, even a kingdom that is apolitical, if there's anything you can do to secure the livelihoods of the people in the area where you are Prime Minister.
Well, I think I've mentioned a Mwaniterimba campaign 3 or 4 times now. When I went on the Tofali drive, and the Tofali campaign, I realized the levels of poverty throughout the kingdom. And when I sat with my colleagues, we said, how do we address the issue of poverty? Now, you tell people to do things in which they have comparative advantages. Now, 70% of the people in Buganda, or even Ugandans, are in the villages. And the most practical thing for them to do is to embrace agriculture. And we said, which crop do we encourage? We said coffee, because people have, you know, coffee's been here for all time. People know it. And when you see a good old house in the village, the owner was a coffee farmer. So we embarked on the campaign to produce more coffee, and it's caught on, fortunately. People have grown coffee in Buganda very, very extensively. People have also grown matoke, by the way. When you go to the markets today, in Kampala, in and around Kampala, most of the matoke is coming from around here. Because of all these challenges with COVID and things, much of the matoke is coming from Singo, from Singo, Chivoga areas. Much of the matoke is coming from certain areas in Busiro. People have embraced it, from Masaka. So people have embraced agriculture. I think that's where we've got to start to fight poverty.
People in the lockdown now, if they are not earning and they're not selling anything, and of course government tried to give food to people in Wakiso and Kampala, not everybody has been reached. Does it worry you that when people are pressed against the wall like we see now, that could be a could breed anarchy.
Of course, it could. You see, the day population of Kampala is about 4 million, I understand. And out of the 4 million, I think about 1.5 or 2 million people do menial jobs. They live by the day, so to speak. These people need to earn something every other day to survive. They don't earn salaries like Patrick and your colleagues here. And that population is big when they don't have food. It can breed anarchy. So we can only hope that the pandemic is brought under control so that the lockdown is lifted. Because you see, it's a very difficult decision, I think, for government.
Yeah, but you as the custodians of values and character and all these norms, probably it is also incumbent upon you to send in a message to the people that even though you are hard hit and we understand, but you know, somehow sanity should prevail. I wonder what platform you're using to do that.
We do that all the time. First of all, I urge people to be compliant with government guidelines. I know how difficult it is, but then I think overall it's more important to be healthy and alive than to go out and catch the virus and you die. I don't even think our healthy care system has got the capacity if the pandemic hit us real hard. But we encourage people to be law-abiding. The Kabaka told people the other day to desist from domestic violence during the lockdown. It's very difficult. People are in their houses all the time. The husband, the wife, the kids, they are together 24 hours, 7 days a week. You know, people are stressed. People are going to snap. So we urge them to desist from domestic violence.
So the issue of domestic violence, Mr. Prime Minister, is it a recent thing that has cropped up into our society? What has gone wrong with our values that the people you're supposed to love are the same people now you're torturing, you're tormenting? Is this a new thing, or it has just been given visibility because of the platforms of communication that we have? This has been the way it was.
I think the platforms amplify it, definitely. With the internet, with Facebook and Twitter and all these things, everything gets, known so quickly. But also, you must realize that 70% of our population are young people. And a big percentage of that 70% are underemployed or unemployed. I think we also have high hunger levels. High hunger levels. When people are dissatisfied with their way of life, their standard of living, they tend to vet out the anger on the people next to them. Because poverty is a reality in this country. And I was talking about the 1.5 or 2 million that live by the day in Kampala. Well, those people, most of them are underemployed. They are not exactly satisfied with the way they are living their lives. That causes stress and anger and eventually domestic violence.
So, when we finally fight off the disease, and I think we shall, how do you think, for example, the city should be run? Because there are propositions that maybe a few border riders should be allowed into the city, in your view. How do you think? And I can see now excavation works or civil works going on in the old taxi park. There are fears among taxi drivers, perhaps they could be driven out of the city. There are fears among border riders that perhaps they may not even come back. This is the capital city of Uganda, but also right in the heart of Buganda. You have such a big stake. How should it be run?
Well, look, we've got so many border riders. We've got so many taxi drivers and conductors. You simply can't push them out of the city without an alternative plan. What we need to do, which we didn't do from the very beginning, when these borders came on the scene, was the failure to regulate the industry. I think if the industry had been regulated, for example, the border riders must observe traffic. They must be registered, first of all. And wherever their stages may be should be also known and registered. Each one must have a number. They must observe traffic regulations and rules. All these things. And regulation brings about order. The same applies to the taxi drivers. You do not push them out of the city, but you must regulate them. The condition of the commuters, the vans, you know, some of them are actually dangerous for the users. I mean, the dangerous mechanical conditions. All that has to do with regulation. I think the key thing should be regulation. And if the city authority wants to control public transport, I think the stakeholders should be involved. For example, if you want to introduce a bus system in the city, which I think is wise, you need to bring these taxi drivers and taxi owners together. And you make them buy shares in the bus company that you are setting up. I don't know why they wouldn't embrace that. If they are brought on board as these ideas are being mulled over.
Must every leadership decision include bringing people on the table to take a decision?
It makes it easier for implementation. Because the bus system would, I think, to a large extent, control the traffic confusion. Some people call it traffic jams, but I think it's traffic confusion. Because every country gets a traffic jam now and again. But ours is traffic confusion. A bus system would help, because if somebody boarded a bus in Kajansi and is going to Gaba, there is no reason to all the buses to meet at some point and then they come out. I don't know who. I advise the city authority against a car park for the taxis. Why should they congregate in one place and then they come out? This is going to create a gridlock. Why don't I board a bus from Kajansi when I'm going to Gaba, and when I get to the clock tower, I get off and I board another bus going to Gaba without going to any sort of bus park or car park, because that creates a gridlock, like a bottleneck.
The vehicle should keep moving, like
a
current.
They should just keep moving. All the time they should be moving. If I'm going to Bwaise and I'm coming from Chireka, I would board a bus from Chireka, you know, marked bus 10, and I know that bus 10 from Chireka, it goes to Natete. And then I know that bus 5 is the one that goes to Bwaise. I get off at the city square and I board bus 5, which goes to Kawempe. I don't need to go to the bus park or the car park. But you need to collect the leaders of the taxi drivers and you engage them. You need to offer shares to them in the bus company, which they could. Because you would sell, let's say, five tax commuters,
but also,
to buy one bus.
Any change to give us an efficient public transport system in the city would exclude some people. Some people would be excluded. Because if you bring a bus, for example, you know, that can take away jobs of about maybe 4 or 5 minibuses or how many borders. In fact, there's also even a proposition that some parts within the central business district should be excluded to maybe the border riders and people like this because of issues of congestion. I wonder what's your take on that?
All that is about regulation. All that is about regulation. If there is efficient regulation and you say, these are the areas where the borders operate, it works out very smoothly, but there is no regulation. These are governance issues, Patrick.
So this problem we have as a pandemic, can't government use it as an opportunity also to sort issues of regulation, issues of transport system? Do you think they have what it takes so that when we come back, I don't know if they engage, Kampala is a better city? If they engage the stakeholders, I think it can work. They need to sit down with them. The kingdom is a stakeholder. Have they engaged you?
I've told you I've advised the city authority already, by the way. I advised them not even this time round, years back. Because I'm totally against the idea of a car or a bus park. It's not even true that when you have a bus system, you take away jobs. You know, the buses they must have hubs where they refill, where they are washed, where they are serviced. All those hubs create a lot of jobs. All the girls, you know, making coffee and selling chapatis in the tax park will go and do it at the hubs. The hubs outside the city. For example, you could set up a hub in Nabingo or somewhere, in Nsanji. That hub is where the buses go to be washed, to be serviced, to change tires, to all these things, to change the drivers. And that hub creates a lot of jobs. I don't think people think full circle and deeply about these things. I just don't think so.
In the pandemic that we are facing, Mr. Prime Minister, we have seen recently that many cases are coming from across the borders, from the official border that we know, Mutukula, Malava, Elegu, and sometimes in Mirama Hills. But we could also be getting people coming into the country through the porous borders of our country. Do you think they're well manned? What can we do to ensure that the borders are sealed off and people are not infiltrating in?
The porous borders are a very big challenge, I think, to the authorities. But the number of people that go through the porous borders are very few. They're very few. I think the government can deploy security to what do you call it? To
man the areas and secure the borders.
They can patrol. They can patrol those areas. Because I think intelligence knows about all these porous borders. I can't believe that intelligence doesn't know about the porous borders. Otherwise, you'd get all sorts of illegal arms into the country. You'd get marijuana into the country and all these, you know, these illegal merchandise into the country through the porous borders. I think they've got a fair idea about the porous entry points. They can patrol them. And then they are strict at the official border points. I think that can control it to a large extent. In any case, those porous borders are also dangerous to the people who use them. They know that they risk arrest and all these things. So they need to be patrolled. I think they know them. I think they know about 80 or 90% of the porous entry points. The security, the intelligence must be knowing them.
During this kind of lockdown and the disease that is afflicting humanity, what scares you?
What scares me is the mindset, more than anything else. When people, for example, are laid off their work, or when people produce things, I was talking to someone who is engaged in poultry, and he's got piles and piles and piles of trays of eggs, because the bakers have scaled down their production. And this person is so worried because he has to continue feeding the chicken, which he can't sell. The people who are involved in piggery, feeding pigs is extremely expensive. So the people in the workplaces, in the offices that have been laid off or are not being paid salaries, the biggest drawback to productivity, to production, is the mindset. The mind is a very potent force. Now, after the pandemic, if somebody goes to their places of work and the work is no longer there, they tell them, we are sorry, we scaled down, we shall contact you when production goes up. Now, the mindset of that person is going to be a major, major drawback. But besides the mindset, I think there will be a spike in production and demand. And if we get our priorities right, it won't take us so long to recover from this slowdown of production. In my estimate, anyway. I am not an expert in economics, but I'm a student of history, and I know what happens when wars come to an end.
You know, I understand Uganda was getting almost $1.6 billion through tourism.
Yeah.
And so tourism is taking a hit, and you may not recover in a very long time. In the meantime, the hospitality industry is going to struggle for a long time.
That's true.
And of course, the restaurants are not working, and hotels and all these. And you know, Buganda or Kampala is the door of the country. People just come here before they even go to visit other parts of Uganda. I wonder what would be the ideas to come from Buganda Kingdom in terms of reviving the hospitality industry and how we can move forward. Because $1.6 billion, if it's not in the economy, that's going to be a very...
I think we are hit
huge.
hard as a kingdom, by the way, as far as tourism is concerned. Because as you know, when people come to Uganda, some want to see the gorillas, others want to see the lions. But when it comes to heritage, many people come to Bulange, many people want to go to Kasubi tombs and all these things. So we are hit hard. But I think the best way to deal with this is to ensure SOPs, safe operating procedures. We've got to assure the visitors, the tourists, that their safety is guaranteed. We must ensure that when they come to the country, the hotels where they stay are safe for them so that they don't contract the virus. That's extremely important. That the drivers who take them to these different spots which they want to visit are safe. The vans themselves are disinfected and all these things. I think it's about, are they called safe operating procedures, I think? We must ensure the safety.
Have standard operating procedures.
I think standard operating procedures.
Yes.
We must ensure that the visitors are assured of their safety. That is key. Because
people come sometimes to see our country because it's gifted by nature. It's beautiful by all standards than any other past.
I went to Toro some time back during Easter, and I went to those hills where you got the crater lakes.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the most beautiful part of Uganda.
Yes, by the way,
those crater lakes in Toro.
If Uganda is the pearl of Africa, Toro is the crown of that pearl.
I like that. But it's exceptionally beautiful.
Yes, it is. But now, life is not going to be the same. I want to bring the attention to you because in the Rwenzori and here in Buganda, we have seen, Lake Victoria break its banks and the shores. In areas of Masaka, it has flooded 11 kilometers from the shore that they knew. And of course in Kasese River Nyamwamba, creating havoc downstream. And that could also be as a result because we have destroyed so much of our environment.
Yeah.
So moving forward, what do we need to learn from nature that is hitting back because we have maybe not taken care of it well? Buganda must come up on top in trying to find a way how we can preserve our nature, because what we're seeing, if it wasn't for COVID, it would be the biggest story moving every day.
And if there is a situation which makes a case for federalism, it's the pandemic, COVID pandemic, and it's the environment. If you look at video clips on NTV and every other TV station, people are saying, government ejetu yambe, because the river burst its banks in Kasese, because there are landslides in the east, in Bugisu and Kapchorwa, because a bridge has been swept away in Mbarara, because Lake Victoria has burst its, I don't know what they call them, it is overflowing. Now, you can't expect the central government to deal with all these issues. And everywhere you go, people are talking about food. In every little town which has been locked down, people are asking for food from the central government. Why don't we empower the government of Toro? Why isn't it a federal system to deal with these pandemics when they arise now and again? If I had the power, there would be no issues of the environment in the Kingdom of Buganda. I don't have the law. We invite investors, and the Chinese comes to set up a factory. A factory to manufacture these plastic bottles. A bottle like this for Rwendo mineral water. Somebody comes from China to set up a factory in a swamp, and I don't have the power to evict him. That's why I want federalism, to ensure better governance. That's why we started, Patrick. How do you deal? You look at Luera. Luera is the swamp before you go to Lukaya, as you drive to Masaka. And you get these Chinese to grow rice. And Luera is a catchment area for water. When it rains, it used to be held by Luera in that swamp. And it would trickle down to Lake Victoria gradually with time. I want to cry as I drive through Luera to seeing these Chinese growing rice. How can rice be more important than the environment? We don't have the power to stop them. That is the challenge.
Right, Honorable Prime Minister, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guest tonight is the Prime Minister of Buganda, Oweekitiibwa Peter Mayiga. I just want to look into issues which are political, even though I know you are you're a people's leader.
But I can always talk about politics.
Yes. Recently we have seen the Speaker and the President lock horns over the 10 billion shillings shared by MPs. We even saw the Speaker directing MPs to disregard what the orders of court. I wonder what would be your take on that.
I think that was the most interesting aspect of the lockdown. A parliament must go right after the executive. The parliament must go after the executive. That is the essence of separation of powers. The executive govern the country. They introduce the bills to parliament. Parliament legislates. Parliament passes the law. The courts interpret the laws. That is the essence of separation of powers. And we don't want a parliament which is always in bed with the executive. That can only spell danger for the country. So I like it when when the Speaker stands up and says, look, I don't think they were right, though.
Award themselves 10 billion.
I simply do not see how the MPs were right over the 20 million. Neither are they right about taking 40 million. I read in the papers. I think that is even worse than the 20 million. But what I'm saying, Parliament should stand up to the executive and tell them this is wrong. But I don't think the Parliament has the right...
But Mr. Prime Minister, it appears it was the executive now telling Parliament that you are wrong on this issue.
But I think Parliament, the executive was right. You see, bills are introduced in Parliament by the executive. And either Parliament accepts them or rejects them or modifies them. Yes, there are these things about private members' bills and all these things. But those are rare occurrences. The general way things work is that the executive introduces bills. So if the executive introduces a bill in which they want supplementary budgets for certain provisions to cater for certain matters, they cannot, on their own, as members of Parliament, introduce their own financial bill. But for me, the question was, why didn't they question the billions that were allocated to the Prime Minister's office, the State House, I don't know, all these agencies of government that were allocated billions of shillings? Why didn't Parliament question that? And instead allocated themselves, 10 billion. They should have questioned the billions that were allocated to the Prime Minister's office, the State House, to
the supplementary budget.
They should have questioned. They should have called...
And defense.
They should have called the accountant generals for all these institutions to come and explain. Why does defense need 600, I don't know how many billions? Why does the Prime Minister's office require so many billions? They should have done that.
Do you think
I didn't hear them do that. They just passed it and on top allocated themselves 10 billion. That was wrong.
Do you think the element of the separation of power is endangered in Uganda?
Well, many times when you compromise the legislators, they are not going to separate the powers.
Who is compromising the legislators?
I don't know. I hear they were paid money, 40 billion. I don't know where it came from, but definitely that's compromising the legislators. Wherever the source of the money. So how are you going to stand on your 2 feet and play the overall function that the legislature is supposed to play over the executive? It's very difficult. But I like the spat between the head of the legislature and the head of the executive. I think it is healthy for democracy. And people should not interpret it in any other way. That's what we should be seeing all the time. for better governance in this country. I enjoyed it absolutely.
There is a young leader. There's a young leader in Buganda, and to be exact, from Mityana municipality, the MP Zake. He tried to give food and then he was arrested. We've seen the clips of him being arrested, I should say, peacefully. But a few days later, the man looks like the pictures we saw were so gory, like what had happened to him. It appears that young leaders in Buganda who have given so much inspiration to the people across our country have also, faced the wrath of the state in a very bad way. And I'm sure people are looking at the Prime Minister, the Katikkiro of Buganda, people like you, sort of give a voice and maybe of reason.
Last week on Monday, the 11th of this month, I gave the State of the Kingdom address. And on behalf of the Kingdom of Buganda, I condemned the violence meted out against MP Zake. I also condemned the violence meted out against political activists. The other day, a young girl called Rita Namirembe was knocked down by a police vehicle and she died. The other day, Daniel Cheyune was shot dead, point blank in Nansana, simply because of cheering Bobby Wine. The security agencies need to be professional. They don't need to be violent. If they're professional, they will be able to handle the situation. But violence cannot be the methods of work, the method of work for the security agencies. That doesn't depict them as being professional. I don't understand why Zake was beaten the way he was beaten. I just don't simply understand. I mean, I've seen other MPs distributing food. They haven't even been called to police stations to make a statement. And they've distributed food in markets on the roadside with no social distancing. So it depicts that there is bias. There is bias against the politicians from the opposition camp. And I was watching news on NTV where Zake alleged that as they were beating him, they were accusing him of being a Muganda. I can't believe this happens. And these are the reasons why the war was fought in Luero. I do not believe that the security agencies who can arrest someone and beat him and accuse him of being a Muganda or a Mutoro or a Langi. I don't think it's totally, it floors me completely. Thinking that can happen today in 2021.
As a Katikkiro of Buganda, we could imagine probably you pick a phone and call the Prime Minister of the country, or you pick a phone and maybe you call to the Defense Minister because you are at that level, you have some kind of clout, and question, because when you do question...
We talk to them. We do talk to the authorities. They always tell us they're going to carry out investigations. That's the standard answer that they give me all the time. I talk to them. And they tell me they're going to do investigations, carry out investigations. But we don't see any report. There is no report that is ever tabled anywhere in Parliament. The perpetrators are not arrested or charged in court. We do our part, but these are times very difficult times.
Those two members of Parliament, the Honorable Zake and the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi, there's no doubt that they have inspired Ugandans, and the political momentum seems to be on their side. And I'm tempted to ask the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi, is he the one?
I don't know. I only have one vote, my brother. I only have one vote. It's a secret ballot. I cannot tell you I'm going to vote. It might hurt you. But look, I think what the country requires is an atmosphere under which people can express themselves freely. People can contest for any office in the country without let or hindrance. The people should be able to meet their supporters and they introduce to them their agendas without being beaten up. And the people who want to go and listen to political actors should have the freedom to do so and to express themselves. Then the people should vote whoever they think is capable of leading the country freely. It could be anyone. So I think the right environment needs to be created in this country, and it is the obligation of government to ensure that everyone is protected, irrespective of their political persuasion or ideology, irrespective of their ethnic origin. That's why the beating of Zake and allegedly that he was being beaten because he's a Muganda. I asked for the government to investigate. I hope those who arrested him will be questioned in public and we get to understand these things. People must be protected irrespective of where they come from, irrespective of their religion. That's the duty of government.
You know, leaders who are under the spotlight like you, even some of you, some people have given a lot of, they're applauding you for what you've done. But I see a lot of negativity against you and your name and what you do, especially on different platforms. And I'm wondering, does that concern you? What is bringing this so much, a lot of dirt thrown against you? I cannot even mention the individuals, but there's so many, maybe 2 or 3, not so many, but the frequency under which they come. And I've always wanted to know, why?
First of all, the people who throw dirt at me are not many. They are few. But they like to talk all the time. You know, when people are idle, they're going to talk. They're not many, but they talk a lot. That is one. But there are also people, the detractors, who do not want to see progress, the kind of progress we've made in Mengo. It is modest, but it creates an impact. You know, when you mobilize people and you tell them to go and work and they respond, some people don't like that. Some people don't like that. Those are the people who were even fighting me when I was doing the Tofali drive. Because I was mobilizing people. We don't want people to be apathetic. We want people to rise up and work and develop themselves. Some people don't like that. They challenged me during the Tofali drive. They challenged me during Chapa Mungaru. I'm empowering people to get land titles. The Kabaka wants his people to have land titles. Why? How can that be bad? But these are the detractors who don't want an empowered community.
Do you feel a sense of frustration?
Not at all. Not at all. Because I would be frustrated if the general mass of people in Buganda were against me. But Patrick, you may not believe this. If I walked out today and I walked into a market or the roadside, in 2 minutes, you would see what would happen around me. I would be concerned if the general mass didn't appreciate what we try to do. I don't do it alone. I do it with my colleagues under the direction of the Kabaka. And people are happy. So the detractors don't want to see these modest achievements that we've made in the kingdom in the past few years. So they bribe the idlers. they bribe the criminals. You know, there are criminals all over this country who do no work. They paid little money, by the way, to abuse other people. They bribe the drunkards. they bribe these people who smoke marijuana. They bribe them with little money and they come up with all sorts of name calling. Now look, if you want to say I'm bad, you can say it. But if you expose your nakedness in a bid to paint me bad, then I think it's you who is exposed. So I'm not frustrated at all. I just feel sorry for them, actually.
Okay, I just want to leave that now.
Sorry for them.
In our journey to 2021, considering the big chunk of time now has been taken because of the pandemic, do you think this general election can still happen in the dates that had been planned for?
I think so. I mean, if the pandemic is brought under control, national and globally, and if the safe operating procedures are being adhered to, I fail to see what should stop an election. I mean, I do not think that The rallies, yes, play a part. But I do not think that the millions who vote do so after attending rallies. Look at it this way. In the last elections, the Electoral Commission announced that President Museveni got how many votes? 5 million? 5.6?
Thereabout.
About 5.6 in the last election, I think 2016. And they said that Dr. Kizza Besigye got about 4 point something, 4 million or something. I don't remember very well. But when you look at the rallies, let's start with President Museveni rallies. If you add up all the people that attended his rallies all over the country, they don't amount even to 1 million. I don't think so. I'm talking about all the 150 districts in the country. Mm-hmm. All the people that attended his rallies don't amount to 1 million. I don't think so. Because how many people do you get at a political rally? If there are many, there are 20,000. And how many rallies did the president hold? I don't know. How many were they? If you add all of them together, you don't get to 1 million people.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that everybody who's going to vote for you should come for your rally.
That's the point. So the idea about an election isn't about the rallies. That's what I'm trying to say. People will vote you even without coming to your rally. I think that the campaign should be carried out on radios and TVs. I think every area in this country is covered by radio and TV. At least about 90% of every area is covered. I mean, people can be told, go to a stadium in Moroto, the president, who is a candidate, is going to address you from the State House in Entebbe. And then keep 5 meters away from each other. People will come and listen to him, and he campaigns. And the same is given to Dr. Kizza Besigye. The same is given to Robert Kyagulanyi Bobi Wine. The same is given to...
Of course, that would give a lot of clout to the incumbent president, because you've been more to the people, and perhaps you even have the tools to do that.
The incumbent always gets an upper hand everywhere in the world. In the US today, President Trump flies in Air Force One to attend his rallies. That's a privilege that comes with him being president today. But presidents, incumbents get thrown out now and again. President Trump could be thrown out.
Okay,
so what I'm saying is this. It's not a normal situation. So what do you do in a difficult situation? You do what is best in a difficult situation. I think if the pandemic is still ravaging us, by the end of the year, by early next year, it will be a bit difficult. But if it is brought under control, as it seems globally it is coming under control. In any case, viruses normally don't last beyond six months. So the Electoral Commission should engage the country in a debate whether or not we should have an election. I think it's the job of the Electoral Commission. I haven't had a statement from the chairman of the Electoral Commission. The president gave his opinion. I think other people should also give their opinions. The Electoral Commission should pronounce itself on this.
Okay, as we come to the conclusion of our discussion tonight, I know that you're now 7 years into service as Katikkiro of Buganda, and perhaps you have 1 year to end your second contract.
Who says you have got a contract?
I thought you
Where
do.
does that come from?
I thought you do.
No, I've never heard about that.
Right.
I'm hearing this for the first time. I don't have any sort of contract.
Okay, but after 7 years, after serving...
When the Kabaka hands over to you the mace of authority, the Damula, you are in office until he directs you to return it.
To return it.
And until he does that, there are no terms of offices for the Katikkiro. I'm aware of.
It's good you have no term. Ugandans don't like term limits. But, you know...
They like them. There was a big problem lifting the term limits from the Constitution.
Yes, but do you have some kind of an ambition to lead your country beyond leading as a Katikkiro? Because there have been some talk in the corridors of power that maybe the Honorable Peter Mayiga could be the next.
I knew that question was going to come from Patrick Kamara. But look, I'm not a prophet. I cannot predict what the future will bring.
But there has to be some ambition.
At the moment, the ambition I have is to lead the kingdom on behalf of the king.
No, I mean leading Uganda.
Of course, leading Uganda can be done by even you. If you're asking me whether I've got the qualities to be president, I think I do have them. But At the moment, I've got enough on my plate. That's the answer I give everyone. Today, I cannot run the kingdom and then build up ambitions for leading the country. I'm running the office of Katikkiro, and I'm trying my best. Okay. I don't know whether my best is good enough, but that's what I'm doing. What's
going to be your parting shot?
My parting shot is people should retain hope under all circumstances. People should never lose hope. People should never lose hope ever. And people should keep healthy. I think in life, those are the two most important things. If you are in good health, and if you retain hope, the sky is the limit for anyone who wants to prosper, for anyone who wants to make progress, for anyone who wants to make an impact in society. Be him a TV anchor, be him a sports writer, be him a lorry driver. Health and hope.
We thank you very much, the Right Honorable Prime Minister of Uganda, Peter Mayiga. We thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And we are grateful that you allowed our cameras to come into this very palatial, exquisite and serene home.
I've been working for a long time, my friend.
Yes, a very beautiful place. And I think for us, even when I'm working here, I was enjoying my being here because it's some kind of unwinding.
Thank you very much.
We thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of On the Spot. Good night and God bless Uganda.